Got my hair cut yesterday, and I'm just waiting to see my counselor. And I got 3 new notebooks because I filled up my last 2. I kind of like these ones because the pen goes on the paper better. It doesn't leak as much. Work hard, dream big. Be brave. And get busy. I like the bee. I like honeycombs and that structure of how they all connect together, and I think we're kind of like a honeycomb structure. Humanity is. And then I went to the health food store to try to get vitamin C serum, but it was so outrageously priced high, and I know I can get it cheaper on Amazon. So I'm gonna do that. But I got a drink that I've never seen before. I've seen the Bragg company, they're the apple cider vinegar people and the liquid aminos people, but they have a drink and it's Concord grapes, so I just thought I would try it and buy something in there. And yeah, and I also got a coffee. And when I was driving to the health food store, I took a different way. I took the way the maps told me. And I saw a metaphysical bookstore. So I might pop by there after my appointment and then somewhere else, and then I'm driving out to see a friend. I'm feeling pretty tired these last couple of days because I'm taking only a quarter of Zopicone and I'm not sleeping as much. So last night I slept from about midnight to 8:30 a.m. and a full Zopicone would probably make me sleep 13 hours, not 8.5. So I'm feeling tired, but I'll likely adjust to the tiredness or start sleeping more if I take the transdermal cream my friend made for me. Or I stopped taking Benadryl too last night, or I might have taken a quarter or a half. So tonight might be even worse with only 0 Benadryl, but I could take Gravol instead, just to sort of catch up on some sleep. Seems I need more right now. And I have a lot of things to talk about. I did get an email with that webinar by John Harold talking about the process-oriented approach to extreme states and altered states of consciousness. And I started watching the 2-hour video. Haven't finished it yet, but it's really good. I feel like I've just discovered this term, process work, but it feels like what I've been doing with myself is some kind of version of a process work. This John Harold guy, he took the training for process work and finished it a year ago. And he was lucky enough to have a process worker therapist guy who, when he went to him with his out there experiences, he said, "Wow, that's great. It sounds like you have a lot of creative energy." And then the therapist guy said, "Do you want to make meaning out of this and share it with the world?" And that's kind of funny because that's what I've been doing with my own experience, but I've been doing it with myself. I haven't had somebody to officially, professionally facilitate that. And yeah, so it could be kind of similar what I've created for myself as to what he's able to facilitate with others. And maybe it could be something good to study, because then it gives an official title to what one is able to help people with. Because I feel like, hey, I could help people make meaning out of this. And again, it's not about the meaning I've made, but making one's own meaning, one's own unique meaning. I've talked about what this could mean about the human brain and reality and neurology and things like that. And they're just educated guesses. They're taking subjective experience and trying to make it somewhat objective. For me, I realized today, I wrote this down, that when we talk to a psychiatrist about our subjective experiences and they're trying to make them meaningless experiences, they take whatever we're saying and they say, well, that means this pill or that means this label. So they're putting it into their own new categories to then usually most often give us some kind of pill. So we're sharing all this subjective experience. It's being interpreted as mental illness, like that means mental illness, and that means this pill or that pill or these combination of pills or pill changes over the years. So our words, our inner experience, our subjectivity is being turned into a material object. Like whatever we say is sort of translated into this X pill or Y pill or Z pill, and those are the ones we take. Whereas if we were talking, say, to somebody who did a dialogical approach, what we say would translate maybe into a question they ask us in order for us to unfold more meaning. And I feel like the more we're able to unfold more meaning, the less we need to consume these pills. And I've changed my views over the years, and that's part of the process here, is changing one's views and exploring and experiencing. Unlike psychiatry, they always, they might give you a new diagnosis, but they don't take away the meaning mental illness. But I feel like the more I've been able to explore my own meaning, when I do feel that the pills are beneficial, as right now for sleep, they tend to not have very many side effects. I don't know if this is absolutely true. It's a hypothesis I'm making right now, because I feel like the more I've made my own meaning and understood myself, I'm not afraid of myself. So I'm taking pills for sleep. I'm not taking them for fear. And fear is tied into, of course, an emotion, but it's also tied into thought. But if we spend a lot of time making sense of our own thoughts and experiences in altered states, which can lead to a lot of interesting thoughts and beliefs, as they're called. In my process, I've talked about getting rid of the process of belief. So something can arise in mind is like, oh, that's interesting. I can write it down. I can make more meaning out of it, but I don't need to believe it, because that creates too much continuity. I don't want to believe anything. I want my brain to be fully open to the next possibility. And I feel too, one could get too stuck possibly at some point on making too much meaning of one particular experience and then missing out on what is available now. I've probably made too much meaning. I don't know if there's such thing as too much per se, but I've made so much meaning about the whole particular thing about, oh, well, it could mean this, it could mean that, my experiences mean this, but also try to tie it into brain processes. Because if we're saying symptoms to a psychiatrist, they're hearing them as symptoms, they're saying, well, that's tied into the brain process of a chemical imbalance. And so we're going to give you these chemicals to fix it or rebalance it. But if I am making up or hypothesizing about how I feel my brain could be working based on what I know about the brain and things in the mainstream about metaphysics and neuroplasticity and human potential and so many things, I can extrapolate to that. And then by doing that, I don't really know where I was going with that, but it was something about, I'm like creating my own meaning, and I'm not relying on a psychiatrist to give the meaning to me. Right now, I feel like, hey, they can call me bipolar, give me some pills to sleep. That's great, because the more I sleep, the better it is. And there could be certain environments where I don't need to worry about that so much. And that's part of what I've learned over the years too. So yeah, I think I was talking about not making too much meaning about a particular experience. Though a short stint or a couple week stint in an altered state can lead to enough meaning and richness to talk about almost for the rest of one's life. So that could also point to the meaninglessness of how we operate on a daily basis. I think if the whole of society was designed based on these meanings, they would be more invisible and we wouldn't feel so compelled to need to talk about them, because they would just be part of the structure. But I got to go into my appointment, and I'll try to talk more later if I can. I'm probably repeating myself, but I don't even know, because I forget. Because like I've talked about with myself, I feel like forgetting is more important than remembering. I don't know if I wrote this down, so I should say it. I think this is one of the things I tried to hold in mind to write down after I was in the shower or something and I forgot. But not committing anything to long-term memory. So using the working memory, something might come to mind and I might be able to hold it long enough to write it down, which commits it to like matter, right? So then I don't have to put it in the long-term memory in my brain. I can just talk about it later and then forget about it. And that's a good process because it doesn't create thought loops. Some sad news today. I learned that somebody in my mental health community died last year that I didn't know. I didn't know they died. I knew them. But I didn't know they died because I was in California for 5 months. And I've been back for a year and this person has entered my mind several times, but I just sort of assumed that maybe they got a full-time job and moved on and weren't coming around. But somebody happened to mention them today and that they died. Like they mentioned that person's memorial and I was like, what? I didn't know. And so that was really sad to hear because it was a person who I would talk with quite a bit and was always very friendly and very nice. Very, very nice. And it must have been not too long after that other person I knew passed away. I think that was February. And this other person, their memorial was in May, so they must have passed away in May or late April or something. And yeah, I didn't know because I wasn't around, and I'm assuming this person, they also died of a heart attack, and they were probably late 40s, mid 50s, or I don't know. But whenever that happens, it reminds me of the seeming rule of 25 less years. Probably not for everyone, but for a lot of people who are on these medications. That's the third person I know from my community. It's not like my community in quotes, but the circle of wonderful people that I've met through the journey of mental health. I enjoy being around people who have been labeled a lot. Such a great community of people. Really, really wonderful people. And when you give them a great place to hang out and work on different things and be themselves, it's really something special. And it sort of reminds me of, I think it was last night, I watched One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest with a friend. It was the first time I'd seen it, and this is a bit of a spoiler alert. What was interesting about the movie is that it seems like the guy, Jack Nicholson's character, he was in the psych ward to avoid maybe work duty at like a prison system or something. I don't know, like a work farm for prisoners. And so he might have been kind of acting crazy to go to this mental institution where they're trying to decide if he's crazy or if he's not, if he's just pretending. And in the process of him being there, he learns that he won't be out in 68 days like his sentence. He'll be out when these people, these mental health professionals, let him out. So even though at some point they were doubting whether he was really unwell in the mind, they were kind of keeping him there, saying, hey, we have the power to let you out or not. And in the process of him being there, he does a bunch of outrageous things. And of course, the movie's a bit dated in in the different things that happened. But this is the main spoiler. At the end of the movie, he could have left. Like, he unlocked the window because he had the keys and he was going to leave. But he went in a room where one of the people in the ward had killed themselves because of things that happened, and the nurse was really mean. So then Jack Nicholson's character tries to strangle the nurse, and the person did end up dying by suicide on the ward because of the mean nurse being really mean. And then there was somebody who Jack Nicholson's character really connected with. He was a native person, and so I guess Jack Nicholson's character was not on the ward for some time, and then when he did come back to the ward, it turns out the native character finds out by looking at his head that Jack Nicholson had been lobotomized. And so I won't spoil the ultimate ending just in case someone listens to spoilers for just now. But the point is that Jack Nicholson's character wasn't necessarily mentally ill, as psychiatrists would determine, but he basically fell in love with all the guys on the ward. You know, they were the so-called, quote, crazy people and ill, and he was just so hurt by one of his buddies being, like, dying because of that condition, that place. He could have left, he could have ran out the window, but instead he went to run and look in the room to see the tragedy that happened. And because he was so mad, he strangled the nurse, and she didn't die, but he ended up getting lobotomized because of that. And so what I'm trying to say is almost any person I feel who wasn't necessarily diagnosed, put in a community like the one I'm fortunate to be a part of, would fall in love with everyone within a certain period of time. You know, it might be kind of like country music. They say you got to listen to it for a while and then you start liking it. Well, with this community, you could fall in love on the first date, or after a week, or a certain amount of time. Like, it's just a lot of fun. And we also today, another person who was a part of the community left to move on to other things, and I said goodbye, and I started to cry a bit, so I left. And then I was crying a little bit on the way to the grocery store, and of course wishing this person well in their future endeavors. But it was like a real shock to find out that the other person, I was kind of wondering, oh, where did they go? But a lot of people come and go, but that person was always there, and I just didn't ask, but I ended up finding out. And it's really sad that they lost their 25 years. And when that happens, I always have my heartstrings tugged towards finding alternatives or reducing the harm. What I try to do for myself is take as little as I can. Right now I'm taking more than I would like. I'm down to a quarter zopicone, but I'm up at 150 milligrams of trazodone, which I want to get down to about 50 and then eventually 0. And 2.5 quetiapine, which I'd like to get down to 1. And I'm no longer taking Benadryl. I was taking 2, so now I'm down to none. So I have reduced some. I'll probably try the Nasonan to just see what kind of effect it has, and I'll try this CBD transdermal cream to see what kind of effect it has. And I'm taking a bunch of supplements. I just got my order of more of them. I'm probably going to stop taking some of those when I go to California. But now that I have more energy, I'm seeing other things to take and using my blue light a little bit. And I'll have the house to myself tomorrow, so I'm going to start eating really healthy for the week, because I do feel like I used to eat a lot of vegetables, and now I'm sort of, like today I had pizza. It's not really super healthy. So it's important to be as healthy as possible because of the loss of the 25 years. And to go with that, I was just clicking on the Peer Apocalypse website, which is the event. It's actually in Salem, Oregon, May 20th to 23rd, 2019. And I might try to go to it. We'll see. But I just want to read on their website in the About section how it says, why do we need a conference like Peer Apocalypse? Because decisions about us continue to be made without us. Because too many members of our community are unemployed or underemployed. Because a quarter of the inmates in our jails and prisons are people with mental health challenges. Because too many members of our community live in poverty. Because members of our community die 25 years earlier than the general population. So that is related to what I was talking about today with a member of our community, not only my community, but our community, whether it's the one that I'm a part of here locally or any mental health community around the world. Or, at least in westernized nations when we're pathologized. Because we need to be reminded that there's hope. Because coming together awakens our energy so we can all keep doing the vital work we are doing. Because nothing reminds us more that we are strong. We are a strong community than being in one place together and reconnecting as friends and allies. Because we know what works and we need to share what we know with each other. Because when we come together, we can turn the way things are now into the way they should be. So those are pretty good, well, they're awesome becauses. And I have just sort of going from one extrapolation to another. But I wrote my sort of reasons for having a social enterprise or something, a social purpose business for, at the time I was calling it Special Messages Wellness, and making the world a better place for those diagnosed. And I have these purpose statements. Some of them might be kind of overlapping with this Peer Apocalypse, and I guess I can read them now. I wanted to read them at some point. And the purpose of this sort of social purpose business that we would co-create together is to create a total transformation program for labeled consciousness. Some of these are not really fully fleshed out. Manic Epimemetics Project. That's kind of what I'm doing. People might not like the word manic, but for now it might be good to say it just to call people who recognize that word and be like, wait a minute, what else could it be? Recontextualizing, to render psychiatry, medicating, labeling obsolete in those who want. So people who like that paradigm, they're more than welcome to continue with it, and I do continue with it myself. My point is to minimize it and minimize my contact with it and activating the machinery of it as much as I can. To create thinking together, and that's something different than conflict of opinions, most of which we did not originate ourselves. We got it from somewhere else. To harvest mania for the good of humanity, conscious self-sabotage and inconsistency, sabotaging the ego structure that would imagine that we're separate. To collaborate with manics, to create people who can support people through the manic transformation process, to create a community of people who see it this way, that we are one consciousness, to increase wellness literacy and human capacity literacy, to increase visionary literacy, to increase therapeutic lifestyle design practices and happiness first. And I don't know if I have it in here, but create a different life scaffolding and lifestyle design to optimize human developmental potential. And this, of course, is in our community. To augment human capacities of kindness, altruism, laughter, play. Those are some of those manic qualities. To increase self-knowledge of human physiology and self-understanding. Well, why is that important? If we don't understand our physiology to some extent, then we rely on the doctors just saying, oh, it's chemical imbalance, take this pill. And to normalize distress and extraordinarize living, to go from blindness to vision and noticing differences, to kindness and human commonality, to increase social capital, to create gatekeepers to extreme well-being and thriving, to educate about self-knowledge. Some of these don't resonate with me as much as when I wrote it. Some of them feel a little bit like outdated languaging. So I probably wrote this not that long ago, probably within the last 2 years, and already I feel like my own languaging that I created feels outdated. Yet we're still relying on the type of languaging that was created how many years ago for psychiatry, and oh, they changed manic depressive to bipolar. How innovative. Not really. There's more that I wrote. To restore the brain to learning. We don't even really know what learning is. We think it's memorizing and regurgitating. It's not that. We're not brain camels. To provide safe space, inner safe space, safety in the journey through inner common humanity. Create safety to be manic. Example, clowning, improving, dancing, DJing, singing, blah, blah. Safe outlets for that energy. And I had a friend who I sent them the link to the John Harold Process-Oriented Approach webinar, which I'm watching. I have about half an hour left. He's just answering questions, but she was like, we're meant to be friends, and I want to talk to you more about this, blah, blah, blah. I need to send her the link to the Peer Apocalypse conference. And public displays of happiness and public displays of celebration. Consistent inconsistency, extreme joy for no reason. I just wrote down in my notebook that spontaneity could be a sense. Like the word sense has been quite salient for me lately. Like the sense of beauty, the sense of richness, the sense of meaning, the sense of humor. We use that as a phrase, but I feel like since our senses have been programmed by thought, which is meaningless because it's programming that's been put onto us, these other senses that we have, or what we can sense with our senses, when they're clear, we can sense humor, we can sense something that makes us curious, we can sense beauty. Like since I've switched into I've been calling it positive algorithm, but it's not a matter of bad or good. It's more like energy moving outwards instead of like a fog. And I've just been noticing a lot more beautiful flowers and beautiful drops of water on my car, or the way the sun looks when it sets through the smoke, or things just look so beautiful, and it's very, I was about to say distracting, but it's more like interacting. It helps to create energy to notice that beauty. And what else? Train human distress crew for spiritual emergence, like a soteria without walls. Lived experience lens tips. like tips for each other who have lived experience with this, and a page on relanguaging, and I wrote Transformania, conference on manic consciousness. And I also think it'd be cool to create like a manic fest where we could all meet up. And I was thinking it'd be cool to do that when there's already another type of peer conference happening, like at the Hearing Voices conference or the Alternatives conference or this peer apocalypse, or like it'd be cool to have a celebration, like a festival of some kind, just like they have raw food festivals or different types of festivals. And it'd be so funny if we created like a Burning Man, but it wasn't Burning Man. It's like we don't take psychedelics, we just go off our medications all at the same time and see what happens. Have the Zendo Project people there to help us, because we go into those states without any kind of chemical invocation. We need to take chemicals to suppress that algorithm from being invoked, and it tranquilizes our brain and lowers the energy. Yeah. So that conference, and this has the most meaning for me, creating new memes for manics. And like I said, when the brain gets into this type of creating with language and creating lots of meaning, in terms of language, vocabulary, one can create a whole different vocabulary in a way and different meaning, and after a year it's like outdated and boring. And it struck me a little bit when John Harold was talking. He's very on the ball for sure, but it seems to me that this isn't a bad thing, but it seems to me that he learned a lot of this by having a process worker, someone who was already trained in process work. And his phrase that he used wasn't his, he didn't say it was his, was be a little more psychotic all the time. And I might think of that as similar to embody your mania, like bring a little bit of your mania into daily life and build those circuits so it's not so foreign when the energy comes in. And but my point with that was he had a therapist tell him that phrase, be a little more psychotic all the time. So with what he's sharing, of course he has his experience. He came across process work from a process worker, and he didn't create it himself, but obviously I'm sure he's created a lot of things himself. But it's not a bad thing. It's just, what I'm trying to say is we can learn to create this meaning for ourselves. And that was the thing that I think I forgot to say yesterday or the day before when I was saying something and then I forgot where I was going with it, which doesn't usually happen. But I've noticed these last couple days, if something comes to mind and then something else comes to mind, those two things that I'm holding in mind don't last as long as they used to, and I have to like write them down, and usually I get to write one down, the other's gone. Before I could probably hold like 3 things in mind for a while, at least till I'm finished showering. But now I get to my book and I'm like, what was I just thinking? Like, I don't know. So it could be a sign that I need to write things down faster, or it could be a sign that soon I won't be able to hold anything in mind. I might only have to speak in the moment and that's it. Maybe not write anything down at some point, only speak. I don't know. It's not necessarily a bad thing. It seems that, I'll go back to what I was going to say. What I was going to say was, we can learn, our brain can be sparked to do this on its own. We don't need anybody else to tell us how to do this. It helps to have dialogue for sure. I've been having dialogue with myself because I can't pay a therapist $100 or $200 a week. I don't have that kind of money. So I've done this. I'm not calling it process work because somebody created something called process work. I've only heard about this in the last couple of days, but I'm seeing the similarities to what I've been doing with myself, I'm not saying I'm doing process work, I've been calling it self-dialogue. And I think dialogue is important. Like, my thing is, if a lot of us were having this kind of dialogue with each other, none of us would need a therapist to facilitate that. We would be speaking in this way. We would create a bunch of our own meaning and then share the meanings we've created, and then we would say, I don't know what we would say, but we might say, oh, this is another way to look at it. This is a creative way to look at it. This is a loving way to look at it. And we would, from what somebody said, we would create new meaning out of it. We wouldn't be saying, this is my opinion. We'd be saying, oh, yeah, like we would extrapolate together. And that would be way more powerful than me only talking to myself. So, point being, we don't need to pay a therapist. Our brains have the capacity to do this. We could have some kind of facilitator of this too. Like, I feel like I might be able to support people to get their brain working in this way, or whatever it is that the brain was having a sense of when the senses were deconditioned. And a lot of us get into contact with a lot of words. And I feel one of the reasons why I haven't had any more super fast talking or confused speech is because I've learned to speak based on this other brain algorithm. So now it doesn't feel so energized, because the brain circuits have energized that algorithm, so it doesn't really divert so much into the other. And when it does, yeah, I've sort of talked about how these last few months I've just been going out and just sort of doing nothing, eating out at restaurants and doing whatever. And in that way, I was never depressed because I wasn't sitting on my own thinking, oh, I can't do these wordy creative things that I was doing before, or I can't perceive creatively. I never even used my blue light that's sitting right beside me for months because it wasn't even in my capacity to see it. It's like being in a fog. And then, the sun comes out and the fog burns off, and then I'm able to process a lot more information. And it's like, well, I was hibernating and now I'm not. And it's not like, well, I'm depressed when I'm hibernating. It's just getting into tune with the algorithm, with the biorhythm. And, maybe we don't all have the same biorhythm where we can just go and be robots on the 9 to 5. So I have a few more here. A new game of gestures, moods in reality. Yeah, I'm not sure about the gesture thing right now because that can be a lot more powerful and blah blah. And address before stage 4. So that's talking about, it's a movement. I didn't create that, which is before stage 4 mental health, which is people don't address cancer at stage 4, so why would they address mental health at stage 4? So there's different ways, not necessarily to prevent, but I don't know. I think there's a lot that can be understood that takes the fear away from it. And I think once some of us have this stuff not figured out, but if we're in dialogue and creating new meaning, and we're like creating all these seeds in a flower, like us together is this flower, and we're creating all these seeds, and then we start sharing them with other people. Another thing would be to share our wisdom with children so they don't get into the same debacle of moving so far away from who they feel they are in order to please others, like family, society, the education system. Kids are already being born that can't even fit in. We're not meant to fit in. But I don't think they would need to be born like that if we were all open to the diversity of humanity that could be. So, yeah, I think we could help youth, especially if some of us can start living our dreams and, get out of the consensus nightmare and then say, hey, it's really important, almost no matter what, to live your dreams. And that, I think that would be good prevention. I can't say for myself because it happened. It was the mental health crisis thing wasn't prevented. But it's possible to pass that wisdom down and, and move towards like a resonant meme family as opposed to a genetic, like a mimetic family versus a genetic family, because the genetic family doesn't often see the world in the same way, and then we end up acquiescing to the shoulds, or this is what my mom wanted for me, or this is what my dad wanted for me, but that's not me and I can't do that, sorry. So yeah, and yeah, so that wasn't as interesting as I thought it might be, because it's kind of older, right? And yeah, it's sort of older now, and that's okay too. And yeah, I guess really I would like to help people not to lose their 25 years, and maybe if we are gonna lose it, live our dreams in the years that we have left. And I'm not sure what else I wanted to talk about, but yeah, it's kind of all over the place. But I've filled up 2 notebooks like this, and I haven't talked that much about them. And then when I was on the island, I filled up like 3 big notebooks. So I have some stuff to do while I have the house to myself, but I'm going to see how much I can talk to myself. I might try and talk to myself as much as I can. I'm saying that now, I don't know if I will, but I might take the opportunity to talk to myself a lot for a week and kind of catch up on talking to myself. And the other thing I did, and this is a sign that I'm in that energy, because although I don't spend thousands of dollars, I do end up spending a bit of money on stuff. And there was this instrument at this metaphysical bookstore I went to yesterday, and I wanted to buy it because somebody had it when I was on the island, and when they played one of the notes, I noticed that the sound that I hear, like the Schumann resonance, I call it, not that I created that name, but I feel it's the Schumann resonance, it went away, like it neutralized it, sort of like noise cancellation headphones. So this note, I kind of want to know what that note is, and I was playing around with it in the store, but I couldn't hear the sound, the Schumann sound in the store, because there was music playing and stuff. I can kind of hear it right now. Yeah. So if I had that instrument, I would be able to check that. It's like part of my experiment. So I can't help but buy things that are part of this experiment sometimes. And then the other thing I got, this is kind of silly, and I don't think it'll last very long, is I got some friends to join the dialogue. And let me introduce them. This is a dinosaur, obviously, right? And it's a hand puppet, but I can pretend that it's the dinosaur speaking and not me. And I'm talking about mental health, and what I say is that you have a mental illness. And why am I saying this? It's because I'm a dinosaur. And dinosaurs see things in a really, really old, outdated way. And they don't want to let it go. But, like we know, the story of the dinosaurs is the universe comes in and intervenes. So, that's why I got a dinosaur. It's probably good to make him like this, because then you see his eyes properly. And the other character I got, but the thing is that this puppet isn't very good, is a monkey. And it's not very good because this is really tight right here, like, and so it's hard to really open his mouth. So he might be more like this, blah, 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 blah. Whereas this guy, he really could be like, but the monkey represents more of a new way of seeing things. Like, monkey's kind of crazy and fun and spontaneous and goofy and stuff like that. So that's why I got a monkey. So I'll probably return these puppets, maybe, if I don't really keep with it. And I probably won't, because I don't know. But I got these guys to help me talk and figure stuff out. So, yeah, we'll see how it goes with this monkey. I don't like how stiff his lower jaw is. It's probably because he's been medicated from the dinosaur. Yeah, I put him on Seroquel. And, you know, he's probably pretty close to developing tardive dyskinesia, you know? So I gave him something else to try to mitigate that, and that's why his jaw is really stiff. You know, I think he's getting a bit of flat affect. Oh yeah, I had that once. It was really scary. I looked really scary. Are you afraid of yourself, monkey? He is, so let's not be too critical of the monkey because he has flat affect and he could get tardive dyskinesia, which is really awful. Or akathisia. So, yeah, the tranks are really working right now. I think, I don't know what kind of voice you want to have, dinosaur. We'll figure that out tomorrow. And I got one more puppet. I don't know, he's over here. And this one is just a finger puppet, and it's a hummingbird, because I really love hummingbirds. And so he's more like Joy. He's like going off, living the dream, flying off and living the dream, and then so this is kind of the ultimate, this hummingbird. Very joyful. That's what the dinosaur wants to do. That is what the psych system wants to do. It wants to be like, you want to be joyful? You want to live your dreams? No. I'm going to eat you for dinner. And if I don't actually eat you for dinner, well, I'm going to make a lot of money putting my perspective on you. And that's going to feed me. So either way you feed me, thank you so much. You're not welcome. And so these are my little friends that I got. And that's the sort of stuff that happens when the energy comes in. I'm not manic. I'm not out of control. I'm not booking a trip to Tibet or Peru or anything like that. Though that would be fun. Well, I don't know if it'd be fun. I'd probably be scared. But yeah, so I got these little characters to possibly help me out a little bit in the dialogue. I've talked before about how I don't know what I'm going to say. So by using these puppets, I I don't even know what the dinosaur is going to say next. What are you going to say next? Next. Yeah, so, and that's the thing. The energy wants to buy something, go creative, or I bought some vitamin C serum for my face because my compounding friend told me to, so I did. And that would be good because I don't know. We'll see. And oh, the last thing I want to talk about is I think it was 2 nights ago when I was falling asleep. I've talked a lot before about how sometimes I can seemingly remote view, or I can see things in the blackness of closed eyes. Like I see people, I see scenes of different things. But for the first time, I saw like this light. It looked like cells, it's so hard to describe, but they were colorful. It was like fluorescent greeny, yellowy, pinky purple, and it would flash, and it looked like these cells, almost like cells under a microscope, or I don't know how to describe it. It was so cool, but it didn't really make me go like, and wake up. I saw it for sure, and it was really beautiful, and then I fell asleep. But I was wondering if it was from the CBD transdermal cream. I didn't take it that night. I took it the day before. But I'm wondering if it sort of opened up different neural pathways in my brain. I probably won't take any of it tonight because I'm wondering if it slows me down in terms of talking to myself. But I'll take it probably tomorrow night and see what happens, because it's a good week to experiment with things. Because a lot of it is that we're just so molecular, and it's true. If I were to eat 100% raw food for a while, I would start to feel like a zillion bucks. I would have so much energy. I would feel very present and conscious and energetic and creative, and that's just from eating very high mineralized foods and living foods, food that is alive. And I've done that before, and that's what I was doing before I was hospitalized the first time. So I will do it again in the future. Not get hospitalized, but get energetic on raw food. But for now, I'm doing other things. Like there's stages to stuff and different explorations, but I definitely feel that there's something to having healthy molecules, and I think that the amount of nutrients we eat right now is part of what is keeping us stuck in a prison of a system of thought that we all are like little puppets in. And I think we need to have a certain kind of nutrition to be able to create the molecules of the future, like the genes of the future, the what's going to allow our brains to see the heaven on earth that's already here among us. And yeah, so there's so many different things to explore. It's pretty exciting. I'm super stoked, and I have a lot to share. And again, it's kind of disjointed because it's not logical. It's not, I don't know anything. It's creating new little hypotheses, like maybe it's like this, or maybe it's like that, or I could think about it like this, or I could see it like that, or maybe this scientific discovery kind of relates to this inner subjective experience that I've had. So it's making everyone a creator of meaning, and I think that's what's really needed right now, is to create a lot of meaning, because we have a lot of information, too much to take in, and it's not about taking in, it's about creating, about this outward movement from in to out. We think it's about taking everything in and processing it and rearranging it, but I would say it's more about I call it extrapolation. I don't know if that's even the right word. There's probably a lot better words out there to, maybe it's integration. Well, maybe integration would come from being able to integrate some of this. And so I don't want to say how to integrate it. I don't want to say A plus B equals C. It's more like A plus A plus A plus A plus A means you create your own B, and then create the C, and then create your D, and then share it, and stuff like that. So yeah, that's all for now. Last thing I forgot, found a hummingbird sticker today. Hummingbirds are speaking to me. And I've been buying some different drinks that are healthy. Check them out.